All right, a very big welcome to our next session. This one's really interesting. We're going to talk about environmentally friendly fishing in Singapore and is it possible? So with me today, it's my privilege and pleasure to welcome Gail Tay from the SeaKeeper, the International SeaKeeper Society. Gail is the Director of Operations and Programs, and also Sue Yi. Sue is the founder of Marine Stewards Singapore. So a very warm welcome to the two of you. Thanks for coming to the Expo.
Thanks for having us, Dion.
That's great.
Thanks, Dion. Thank you.
Welcome to the Expo, guys. Thanks for being here. So before we dive into this interesting topic about environmentally friendly fishing in Singapore, Sue Yi, maybe you can just tell us a little bit about what Marine Stewards Singapore is all about.
Sure. I think there might be a bit of, okay. So Marine Stewards, we are a marine conservation non-profit. A big part of our focus when we started was to try to promote sustainable fishing. It's one topic that, not a whole lot of groups talk about. So our aim is to educate and promote about sustainable use and stewardship of our seas, and also to activate all sorts of sea sports enthusiasts to contribute to citizen science.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you. That sounds amazing. And you're the co-founder, which is really impressive. Gail, tell us a little bit about the International SeaKeepers Society.
Yes, the International SeaKeepers Society, we are also a non-profit organization, and we were founded in 1998 in the US. And our motto is anything to do with the health of the oceans, related to research, education, protection, and restoration. And in short, we work with yacht owners, and together we work on citizen science programs or community engagement programs or scientist-led programs.
Okay, wow, that's also very impressive. Thank you, Gail. Okay, so let's dive right into the topic. So fishing in Singapore, with so much international waters, our sea borders are, our coastline is so small. Is fishing really a thing in Singapore, Sue Yi? Are people actually doing fishing? We would have thought that there was no fish around in Singapore. Tell us a little bit about the status of fishing in Singapore.
So fishing is a thing in Singapore. We started as a fishing village. So it's part of our history and part of our culture, which is very much alive today because we are a young country, right? So it's been passed down from generations to generation. And even now we have at least 10 to 20,000 active anglers in Singapore. So it's actually very much a thing. So people fish from the shoreline and they also go out in boats to fish. Yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense actually, being, a fishing village, and it grew from there. So has the massive shipping channels and the mass, and Singapore's one of the busiest ports in the world, has that impacted sort of the country's fishing history?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah,
So
okay.
when you look at the map of Singapore, a lot of it is anchorages and fairways, which would then it's meant for cargo ships. So that would get in the way of fishing boats being able to do their activities. So there's definitely some impact into the fishing activities. On the one hand, it might be a busy channel that fishing is not possible. On the other hand, there might be some pollution coming off of those ships. So yeah, there definitely is an impact, with all the trade going through Singapore.
Yeah, okay, but Marine Stewards Singapore is working on minimising that by the looks of things here. So let's talk a little bit first up about fishing regulations in Singapore, Sue Yi. So, who in the government or the government bodies are regulating fishing? Is it regulated? Do we have quotas? Can you just give us a little bit of a flavour of what the regulations are around in Singapore?
Sure. So there's commercial fishing and there's recreational fishing. For commercial fishing, that is bound by the Fisheries Act. So which is regulated, I believe it is by NParks, which is the government agency. But a large part of fishing that happens in Singapore is recreational. And for this part, there is very little regulations. I think there are maybe 4 or 5 species of fish that are protected by law, and the rest of it is actually sadly not very regulated.
Okay. And is that because it's so small industry, or is it low priority? Why do you think does it not need to be regulated? What's your sort of view on it?
It is a really small, like kind of cottage industry, I guess, compared to the rest of shipping and oil and gas that's going on in our waters. Um, but what inspired me to start Marine Stewards was, over like 5, 10 years of fishing in Singapore, I started seeing the catch rates come down, even at spots that I frequently fish at. So when it comes to regulation, and this is quite interesting because you think that a lot of Singaporeans don't want regulations, they don't want rules and laws, but a lot of fishermen have feedback to us that they see less catch as well. And if licensing and regulations help, it's something that they would be happy to have, just so that there's more fish for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's so important, isn't it? So are there any quotas at all? Like, are there a certain, you say there's 4 or 5 that are protected. Is it protected by a quota system or some other way?
No, so and the prohibited species, there are like the devil ray and also the sawfish, which is pretty much gone. So, and there are no quotas on this. So we really hope that more threatened and endangered species will start to receive protection if they're caught in Singapore. So for example, the wedgefish, the shovel-nosed ray, is caught in Singapore, and we raised quite a lot of awareness about that to try to, if you catch one accidentally in bycatch, you release it. Yeah.
Okay.
There aren't any quotas per se at all. Yeah.
Okay. And so was it the lack of regulation, like you say, the dropping of of what you saw in the fish uh, uh, quality and quantity, that was the reason why you set up Marine Stewards, was to try and raise awareness of sustainable fishing, yeah?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, okay, no, that's great. Okay, so just to clarify for me, so if there's no fishing regulation, then there's no regulatory body, maybe, for us to talk to, or, raise concerns to. Is that right? The MPA, or, if we've got some issues around fishing, then there's just simply no one to report to?
So for example, the MPA, they look at, boat safety and traffic offshore. They don't necessarily regulate fishing as an activity. Likewise, for NParks, the government agency, they do protect wildlife in general and also any protected species. But also they do not regulate the sport of fishing.
Okay.
So long term, for the fishing to be sustainable in Singapore, it would be very helpful for the actual activity to be regulated. Just so in a way that it actually protects the fishing community so that they're able to fish, in the longer term, and get lots of fish.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so what Marine Stewards has done is, because regulation takes a long time to put in place. So what we've done is actually introduce guidelines to the community. So we've spoken to quite a lot of these like fishing teams. A big shout out if you're watching this right now. And people gave feedback. So we came up with 3 very simple guidelines as a start. So it's a community-led effort. The first one is to release juvenile fish. Um,
Juvenile fish, okay, yeah.
because there are quite a lot of people out there who, because there are fewer and fewer fish to catch, so even the smaller and smaller fish you catch, they keep, which is just exacerbating the problem. So we want to, number one, release juvenile fish. Number two, no take the protected species. And then number three is to take all of the invasive species, which we have only one main one, which is a hybrid grouper.
Okay, so just to clarify number 3, so that's to take all the invasive species, you're saying. So that's to catch the ones that are predatory to the protected, is that right?
Yeah, so they actually
Okay.
compete for food sources with the native species. A
Okay.
lot more times they tend to be very aggressive.
Okay.
So we've seen in certain areas in Singapore, like the hybrid grouper coming in quite large numbers.
Okay. Okay. So sorry, I didn't quite hear what it was. Did you say it's a hybrid grouper?
Hybrid grouper, yeah.
Hybrid grouper. Okay, I must Google. I must Google that. And okay, so it's predatory, yeah, and that's what you want people to catch and take away. Is it
Yeah,
good eating?
catch and cook. Yeah, it's quite a good eating fish. It's bred for the restaurant industry. For the
Is it? Okay, got it. Okay, so it's then released or escaped and then multiplying and taking over, is it?
Yeah, we don't know yet if they're like multiplying and reproducing outside, but they could well be. Research is going on about that. So, but they're definitely taking over like territory in the water.
Okay, that's really interesting. Okay, so the 3 points in your guidelines are: first one is release the juvenile fish.
Yeah.
The second one was to don't take the protected species, and we'll be able to find out what those are in your guidelines here. And the third one is to take all the predatory fish, which is mostly that
Invasive.
hybrid grouper.
Yeah.
Okay. And how's the response from the fishing community been to these three? They're nice and simple, aren't they? They're nice, simple guidelines, easy
Yeah.
to understand.
Yeah. So we kept it simple on purpose. Right at the beginning, 2 years ago, when we started discussing what sort of management techniques we can use, like bag limits, quotas. It was a bit complicated for a space that where this is new. So the feedback has generally been positive. It's raising awareness in people that, hey, I might not, maybe I shouldn't keep all of the fish that I catch. Maybe I should release some of them. So generally, I think we've got quite a bit of acceptance. There are a lot of people who are resistant to the idea. They'll say, okay, I catch one fish, I don't make a difference, right? But actually, in the greater scheme of things, if everyone thinks like that, and we have 1,000 people who think like that, that's another 1,000 fish that's kept. So we want to tell every angler, like every single fish makes a difference. It's a life, and it makes a difference.
Yeah, that's a great message, Sue. That's a really great message. Yeah, no, thanks for that. So, okay, so we've covered the sort of the bodies that are interested in fishing. So the N parks
Mhm.
and maybe MPA in a roundabout way. But what other bodies are there that perhaps are not government, or there's Marine Stewards Singapore, there's the International Seakeepers Society. What other bodies are interested in this idea of sustainable fishing in Singapore?
Um, it's a tough one. So there's actually an organization by a similar name called Marine Stewardship Council, and they try to certify sustainable fisheries or fish farms. So we're not affiliated with them, but from what I understand, this is probably the only other group that is looking at fishing in the eye and just taking it.
Okay.
Discussing it.
Okay, great. And are there other organizations or bodies in the rest of Asia or Southeast Asia that you sort of align with that are having, similar sort of environmental awakenings about sustainable fishing in the absence of regulation in their countries? Do you know?
I think the sad fact is if you've watched Seaspiracy, I'm not sure if you have.
Just heard about it yesterday, actually. Someone mentioned it to me last night. Yeah.
Yeah, I had so many people talk to me about it, so I had to watch it. And the sad fact is fishing is controversial to address. Not so much like marine trash, because fishing, it entails people's
Yeah.
livelihoods, people taking fish out of the sea, and it is a can of worms.
Okay.
It's a difficult one. So unfortunately, I think there are very few organizations talking about fishing. There needs to be more.
Okay. Okay. No, that's interesting. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so thanks, Sue. So Gail, maybe we'll just bring in the International Seakeepers Society here for a while. So you're headquartered in Singapore. So sort of the shift around environmental awareness. Have you noticed, there's sort of a shift by the public or by fishing people around, this environmental awareness in the last few years, Gail?
Sure. Well, interestingly enough, Dion, I read last year about a survey that was done by Boston Consulting Group. And it was just surveying people on their ideas of, sustainability. And it was across eight countries, over 3,000 people. And the key message came that, post COVID, many of these surveyors, the people who participated, committed to changing their behaviors with specific regard to sustainability. From a SeaKeepers perspective of Singapore, indeed, we see a change, yeah, and that's one of the reasons why we set up our Asian arm in Singapore in 2016. And plus, I also see a difference in the way corporations are running their CSRs with more environmental themes. Regionally, because we work with scientists and we work with like-minded communities regionally, I would say it's a little bit different, especially in those regions where bread and butter issues are more of a priority.
Yeah.
It's a different approach altogether. But all in all, I would say in the last 10 years, things have really grown positively, but definitely there's room for nonprofits like us to do more to create an awareness of the environment and how people can impact it positively. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, there is a shift. We've been doing quite a lot of speaking and interviews with people around electric yachts. So
Yes.
electric yachts have, really taken people's interest in the last couple of years for a number of reasons. One's environmental, but two, also the development of the technology. So I was just wondering if you'd noticed a similar sort of shift. And it's interesting what you say about COVID. What about
Yes.
existing boaters? Is there a shift in existing boaters, or is it just sort of younger, newer people?
Well, I would say that, if you're a boat owner, you generally have a love for the sea. Yeah, that's fair to say. And in fact, the marine industry is also very much regulated. There's lots of regulations and all. But I think the how can I say, the challenge is in the compliance. Yes. And even as voters, you may want to do your best, but there may not be the infrastructure, especially in Asia. For example, at the marinas, not all marinas are well equipped for waste management. So there are these kind of challenges. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So around that, what are, say, the top three sort of tips that you could think about to give to maybe existing boaters? What can I do as a boater? Suyi's mentioned those three guidelines, but what can I do as a boater that might
Yeah.
be simple and easy for me to participate?
Yeah, well, first thing I would say is if you are an owner operated, if your boat, you're operating it yourself, then remember what you learned during your PPCDL, yeah, because it tells you exactly what to do in the Singapore waters, right?
Can you
Um,
remind us, Gail? Because no, I can't remember.
Sure. I mean, I'm being cheeky here, but the point here is that the first thing is to be to practice boating responsibly, and that entails proper handling, proper managing of your vessel and engine, yeah, storage, your refueling, and your waste management. That's very broad subjects, right? So in actual fact, SeaKeepers in Asia, we're putting together our own green boating guide, and
Nice.
yeah, so it's a set of best practices. Although there are regulations, but they are not common practices, in Southeast Asia, I would say, unlike say in the US or in Europe. So we put together a green boating guide, which are looking at all these areas, even right down to what are the cleaning products you should be using, yes, how to green your galley, you know, and the more obvious things like your engine maintenance, yeah, what to do, your oil changes, how to anchor, yeah. Yeah, so these are some of the subjects that we are covering in our Green Boating Guide. It's
Wow.
still under editing. We're putting the design to it, but we hope to release it at the second half of the year. So more information to come on that.
Fabulous. That sounds amazing. Yeah, we'd love to help distribute that amongst the community, and we can also add it as a download for people to
Yes,
be able to download it
yes.
after they've watched
I was
this.
hoping you would say that,
Yeah,
Dion.
no, fabulous. What? No, that sounds really, really great. So there's
Yeah,
things around anchoring. I like the idea of greening your galley. Of course, there's waste management. So it'd be so good to have those simple, easy pointers and reminders. I really look forward to seeing that.
yeah,
Okay, so as I sort of mentioned before about reporting incidents, and maybe both of you would like to contribute to this question. So, if we wanted to report incidents, there's no sort of real regulatory body. How do we report like good things and bad things? What can we do here?
So I guess it depends what the incident is about. So, for example, if it's relating to boating or incidents out at sea, probably the one to report to might be MPA, because they oversee the boating activity. But things relating to like marine creatures, or if you see like a box jellyfish, or if you see some interesting dolphin or dugong, you can also send in the report to Marine Stewards. You can inform us about the sighting, take photos and videos. And then what we do is we will send on the information to researchers, and they are really interested in this sort of thing. Yeah. And all these sightings are actually very useful as points of data, so that they actually get to do research around those.
Okay, great. I noticed relatively recently that there was a Singapore Facebook page on nature sightings. So, do people post marine stuff in there? I haven't looked at the Facebook group, but I noticed. Do people post, box jellyfish and what have you in that group, Sue?
So there are several of these Facebook groups. I think there's a wildlife sighting group.
Okay.
There's Nature Society also. We are more focused on anything that's marine related. So we've got a little bit of a niche over there. Yeah.
Okay, good. So we'll get people to. Would they contact you by email? Is that the way to make contact?
They can email us, or they can even post it in the Facebook group itself. We look at all the
Okay.
posts.
Yep, that's a really good idea. Yep, the Marine Stewards Singapore Facebook group. Gail, what about from your perspective? Have you got any sort of reporting channels for either good or not so good incidents?
Um, well, I think the as what Sue has said, MPA would be your go-to, yeah. But there are, I think, other popular apps out there, but it's more related to things like, if you cite pollution, on the beach, that sort of situation, not major incidents. Yeah.
Okay, no, that's great. So, what you mentioned, Gail, about environmentally friendly products. Have you got any sort of ideas for us I don't know much about environmentally friendly products. What are some examples of what I could know about here?
You mean for your boat?
Yeah.
Okay, so when I talk about environmentally friendly products, I'm meaning the cleaning items, yeah, that you use for your boat. There are, of course, brands out there that are specifically designed for boat cleaning. But in our guide, what we are trying to offer is an option of using natural materials, and you know, it's just showing you, okay, instead of this, why not do this? Yeah. And it's amazing what vinegar and baking soda can do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Indeed.
And a combination of both, you know. Yeah.
Okay, and that, yeah, that's great, and I can see a little video on tips on how to put those two together coming up there, Gail.
Yes. Yes.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Now let's talk a little bit about balloons. Balloons has been quite a big topic, especially on charter boats around the marina here lately. So, if someone's planning a party on a charter boat, what are, say, a couple of top tips that they could do to be more environmentally friendly?
Mm. So from my perspective, or from SeaKeepers' perspective, I think one of the key things we would say is, you know, check with your boat captain, you know, where they are anchoring, you know, make sure if there are mooring buoys available that they use it, you know, and or anchor in sand or even in mud, yeah, depending on where you are, you know. I think, you know, one of the key things is to look out for damage to the coral. That's what we're most concerned about because of the anchoring. And of course, insist on being plastic free. Yeah. I think many people forget that, you know, they can easily cut down on their waste, and also practice, you know, one for one, bring back whatever you take plus one item, you know, that you find. So I think that would be a very good thing to do. And be responsible when if you're diving or snorkeling, you know, and especially things like look at what sunscreen you are using. Make sure that it's coral reef friendly, yeah, in terms of the product. Yeah, so actions like that. So being responsible, yes.
Well, I didn't even know there was coral-free sunscreen that was environmentally friendly. So that's really good
Yeah.
to know.
Yeah.
Gail. That's
Mhm.
great. And Sue, do you have any thoughts on environmental products in addition to what Gail's mentioned?
No, I think that she covers it pretty well.
Yeah.
I would add also for boating practices, where I guess this is more on the captain, where if they go over shallow reefs, there's a thing about they should try to go slow. The reason for that is when the boats go fast, the backwash creates a lot of turbulence, and that kicks up the sand and sedimentation from the bottom, which can actually bury corals. So that's not especially also even like small little jet skis in shallow water, you might get a propeller like cutting off seagrass and getting in the way of habitats. So also just to be mindful of like in shallow waters and over reefs, just go slow.
Okay. And so in Singapore, are there coral that we need to be mindful of? So I understand you saying this on a general level, but for a Singapore boater, is there a particular area that they need to go more slowly in, or be concerned about the coral around Singapore?
So there are a number of reefs that are a bit shallower. Some of them are even in intertidal. So at the lowest tide, they actually show up. So if you remember your PPCDL again, in the boating charts, it does show, you know, where the shallower areas are, you know, shade. I've just studied for the test, so I still remember this. But where it's like light blue and dark blue kind of shows where the gradients are, and then sometimes coral patches are marked out. So those are
Okay.
the
All right. So then, okay, so my learning from that is just to be mindful on any level of shallow water, because there is natural stuff growing down there, even though it might not be the Great Barrier Reef or something like that. It's important to Singapore, isn't it?
yeah.
All the marine life, and yeah, okay, no, that's good. All right, so those are some really, really interesting and valuable tips so far, ladies. So maybe the closing question is, if boat owners and all boat enthusiasts are interested in getting more involved, how can we get involved, and how can we contribute?
Yeah. Uh, as I mentioned earlier, SeaKeepers, we were actually started by a group of yacht owners. And initially, way back in 1998, The idea was to deploy instrumentation in order to collect data on the health of the oceans and share it, with the scientific community. But it has since grown. And one of our strongest programs is what we call our Discovery Yacht programs, whereby, we look to yacht owners to join us and volunteer their yachts. And all they have to do is actually volunteer time on their yachts, and we do the rest. So they may decide that, oh, I want to be part of a scientist-led research program, or they may say that, oh no, I just want to maybe be involved in the educational outreach program, because we have what we call floating classrooms, whereby we bring students on board, and we teach. Yeah, the topic is something related to the marine environment, and it gives them a sense of what it is like to be on the water or to be on a boat, because they also get an appreciation of what is a boat all about, or we just work on community engagement programs. For example, we may do underwater cleaning of debris underwater. Yeah. So we're constantly looking for yacht owners who would like to work with us in terms of donating time on their yachts. They could go to our website, which is, if I may say so.
Sure, please.
Yeah. So it's www.seakeepers.org. org to find out more about what we do, or they can contact me directly. And as I said, we do all the coordination. They just let us know what it is and how it is they want to be involved. In the last 2 years, we've been doing a water sampling program around the Malaysian peninsula, where we've been working with the University of Malaysia, Terengganu, to collect water samples to study the plastic pollution. But unfortunately, because of the COVID situation, that is kind of on a hold. But when the borders of Malaysia are open, we will start that up again. So we're constantly looking, as I said. Yeah.
Fabulous. Okay, that sounds amazing. Yeah. It's a cool opportunity too for boat owners to get involved in such a meaningful way. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Gail. Sue, what about from Marine Stewards Singapore perspective?
Sure. So we're a group of people, mostly sea sports people, whether it's fishing or diving or boating, who are actually more like, I guess, mindful about our marine environment. So if you're interested, you can always join us. And I'll shout out to our website as well, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
please.
That's www.marinestewards.org, and you can join us as a member. And what we do is we try to do activities. We have a WhatsApp members group where we discuss a lot of these items, and we actually make a difference in Singapore. We've actually introduced guidelines. We're doing some more activities in the community to try to, especially for the fishing side, to try to get people to be more mindful. So you're welcome to join us, and we look forward to seeing you.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. And I love your message there about being mindful. I think that's it's so awesome, and it's such a great message. So I want to thank you both so much for sharing your knowledge and your expertise and your organizations with us here at the Boat Buyer Expo. Fabulous topic, really interesting, and you've really passed up some really very sound, easy to implement and valuable points. So thank you so much for being part of it. I'm going to sign up to both of the organizations, and I look forward to helping spread the word of the good stuff that you guys are doing. So thanks, Sue, and thanks, Gail, very much.
Thank you, Dion. Thank you.
Okay, we'll see you on the docks, ladies. Bye for now.